Hello, and welcome for this new release of Xen Orchestra. It's not a spooky release. We are almost for Halloween. That's Xen Orchestra 5.112. It's almost like the end of the 5.x branch. However, now for this October, we have many things to talk about. Not just about Xen Orchestra features, but also about announcement regarding the community. And as usual, we will start with this. So regarding the main, would say, elephant in the room, and as I said, the elephant in the pumpkin, the Veeam open beta is now available to work on top of XCP-ng natively. So what does this mean? This means you can already today download a version of Veeam that will be able to connect to XCP-ng and do all the backup features that you can have in Veeam. So it's great for two reasons. You might wonder, as Xen Orchestra is a backup tool also for XCP-ng, why we're happy to get Veeam on board. The main reason is, as you know, most of our users are migrating away from VMware, and a lot of them are running both Veeam and VMware. And so if you just have to migrate VMware and keeping Veeam, it makes the overall decision to migrate out of VMware easier. So that's why we're really happy with it. But also, it's not just VMware. Veeam is compatible with many other solutions like Hyper-V and so on. So it means you can even have many, virtualization solution, one backup solution, and backup restore between the different ones, different hypervisors and virtualization platforms, giving you a flexibility you like and you want, especially in those days with the Broadcom thing. So it's really a great, let's say, milestone for the entire Vates ecosystem, including Xen Orchestra and XCP-ng. And we are really happy to work with them. It was like many discussions to get to that point, and finally, it is getting there. So feel free to test it. More people testing it, more discussions. Sooner the final commercial version will be available. So again, really happy to go in that direction and happy to work with Veeam to have them in our ecosystem. Let's talk about XCP-ng still. We also have great news this time about the Windows Power Virtualized drivers. So just a bit of context. If you want to run Windows efficiently on top of XCP-ng, you need Power Virtualized drivers, so PV drivers. Those drivers are giving you the great performances because it's directly calling the hypervisor instead of emulation of hardware and so on. So until now, you had to use Citrix drivers for XCP-ng Windows VMs because we couldn't made Microsoft to sign our own drivers. But finally, it happens. So it happened, and so right now you can download directly Vates signed by Microsoft Windows PV drivers. And more than this, it's not just like some open source drivers, but we are also becoming maintainers of those drivers upstream. And since the Citrix ones aren't open source, it means that we are the only ones at Vates contributing directly to the upstream and being, maintaining those drivers upstream and delivering those drivers in a fully open source fashion. So it means they are completely open to download. They are not behind any paywall or whatnot, because that's the way we are, and we are always really deep into open source. And it is not just using it, but it's also collaborating to it as we do now, but also giving it to the entire community. So this is great. It works very well, and the team working on this is growing also, so we could bring more and more features, performance improvements, and so on. The next topic is also a long-awaited features regarding the disks that are larger than 2 terabytes. Now it's possible to test our open beta for it. We hope to get in production as soon as possible, but we need more feedback from users. We don't have any, known bug, but it doesn't mean there is no bugs left. So more people trying it, faster we'll be able to be confidently pushing in production. As you know, we tend to be a bit conservative about stability. We don't want to push something too fast, but I think we are getting closer and closer to a date where we could release it for production. So anyway, it works pretty well. You can do pretty much everything: backup with Xen Orchestra, live migration, even converting old disk to the new format by just migrating to a storage repository where you enabled it. So Pretty transparent, straightforward, and give you access to larger disks. So feel free to test feedback in the forums. It is really important that we get your feedback. Still on XCP-ng 8.3, don't forget we have some, security updates and even maintenance updates, including some performance improvements for SAN deployments. So feel free to stay up to date as soon as possible for many reasons, including security, but also performances. We've seen that for some users. It accelerated the meta operation regarding snapshots and so on. So it's a great addition. By the way, the improvement was made by Citrix, so credits where credits due. So kudos to them to make that improvement. Um, Also, if you that's another topic. We were more talking about the Xen projects right now. It's an interview in the Floss Weekly podcast. We got Cody, our Xen community manager, doing a pretty decent interview, like 1 hour long, where he talks about Xen as a project, as a purely open source project, but also regarding XCP and Xen Orchestra. So it's pretty cool. Feel free to take a look. It's always interesting to have the heartbeat of the Xen project, which is again the core hypervisor we use inside XCP-ng. Then it's a completely another topic, but it's still into the broad, ecosystem. We published a new, very interesting case study with Exodata, which is a company building, let's say, a cloud infrastructure between multiple regions, mostly in, uh, let's say, territories, overseas territories, mostly in France, but it's like French Polynesia, mainland France, the Réunion Islands, many places all around the world. So it's a pretty interesting case on pretty big migration. Again, an exit from a very well-known player having a change of pricing as usual, and they had a really great experience, and that experience they currently have right now is used to continue to migrate their own customers, but also other customers that might be interested to do the exit. So they are kind of leading the way of getting out of that previously big virtualization player. Um, Next thing, it's more an announcement to explain that we are sunsetting Xen Orchestra as a standalone product. So just to roll back to explain a bit in a clear way, back in the end of 2014, we started to commercialize Xen Orchestra Starter back in the day. And so it was like Xen Orchestra Virtual Appliance, XOA, as you know it. That's the commercial edition that you download, pre-install, it works. And back in the days, we were orchestrating Xen Server. And as you know, we forked Xen Server back in 2018 because of the way they were dealing with open source, basically. And then in 2022, we announced we merged all the product into one single stack, the Vates VMS stack, Vates Virtualization and Management stack. So anyway, we did that because now all of our customers are coming from either mostly VMware or other stacks, and they want something that is turnkey and works out of the box and having support for the entire stack. You cannot like split. Like in VMware, having vCenter subscription and then having an ESXi subscription. So what we did is to merge that and having support for the entire stack. So we started to do that like 3 years ago, and now there's no reasons anymore to continue to have Xen Orchestra use just itself without having support for the entire stack. Also, just to give you some numbers, we most of the time when you open a ticket with an issue, it's never only related to Xen Orchestra. It should be like 10% or maybe not even 20% of our tickets. So every time it's related to the entire infrastructure. So that doesn't make sense. However, just to be clear, it doesn't change anything regarding Xen Orchestra itself, the version from the source, for example, that you can download and use all the features. It's not Xen Orchestra appliance; it's different. So there's absolutely no change in that. But it's clear at Vates we are selling Vates VMS and nothing else. So that's exactly the way we are moving forward, and that's how we could build the platform and hire all the developers, engineers we have that work, for example, on the Windows PV drivers and so on. That would have been possible to finance that without any revenue on XCP-ng side. So we continue to move forward. If you have any question, feel free to go ahead on this. It's pretty clear, at least on our side. So anytime you need more explanation, if you want, happy to do so. Let's talk about Easyvirt. So as you know, Easyvirt is providing two products, DC Scope and DC Net Scope. We integrated those products last month. So if you want to, go back to the release announcements for September release, you can. So basically, it's a dashboard providing you all the information you need for doing capacity planning, resource usage, maybe having oversized VMs or undersized VMs to know where you have to buy new servers and so on and so on. So that's the DC scope, but they also have DC net scope, which is the same thing, but for network, looking inside the flows and so on. So this product is interesting. Now you can deploy it within Xen Orchestra, which is great. And to celebrate the fact that it's fully integrated, even in the stable version from September, now we are providing a new deal with being early bird to adopt the solution in a more integrated fashion as an option on top of the Vates VMS, the stack. So feel free to read the blog posts. You have a special offer as an early bird to test the solution, and you can already try it for free. But if you want to go further, because the product is giving you the value you want and you need, that's the opportunity to do so. Let's switch to the events section. So what's next? We will be at different events, directly or indirectly. Directly with API Days in France in 1 month-ish from now, in Paris. We'll be very soon, in less than 2 weeks, in the KubeCon in Atlanta, USA. We'll have a booth there. So if you want to say hi, feel free. We'll have also exciting announcements to make there. We'll be in Luxembourg in also pretty soon. I don't have the exact date now, but I will display it when I will update the blog post. And as you know, we've been in the Xen Summit back in September. I took the time to write a piece, an interesting article about what happened, what we did, the different talks we've made. So you can also find my talk there about the state of the union, if you like, with XCP-ng and Xen project and so on. So if you want to understand the let's say the important things, the future and so on, feel free to have a read. It's a pretty interesting read, especially if you want to keep an eye on the fully upstream open source part of what we do at Vates. And that's it. So let's talk now about Xen Orchestra itself. Finally, the release of this month. So as I said, it's 5.112. We'll probably have 5.113, and that might be the last one of the 5.x branch to announce as soon as possible. And as I said, in 2025, the XO6 version. So first, we talk a bit about security. So we decided, since few months, to put security as the first, let's say, bullet point before talking about anything else. Usually it was backup, but now we wanted to make sure you are not missing anything regarding security. I explained last month what are the VSAs, the Vates security advisories. So we have a new one regarding Xen Orchestra this month, but luckily in the end we are not affected. But still, it's important to make sure that you're aware about that. It's a Redis vulnerability, and in fact, due to the configuration we use, we are not affected. But still, it's published. It's over there. We explain why, and so you have a transparent way to follow us regarding all the security for the entire product, not just Xen Orchestra or XCP and so on. The VSAs are doing a recap of all the security things that could happen to the stack. Let's talk about backup. So in the end of the day, I think we did a pretty decent release regarding backups. We added a new features called sync merge for mirror backups. So that helps to avoid deadlocks issues if you do backups of backups while having backups, arriving at the same time on the main repo you want to duplicate elsewhere. So this options helps to avoid those deadlocks and so on. So you can enable it to make sure that it will wait to have access to the entire file before backup is done. So pretty useful. We re-enabled some features that disappeared when we made the backup engine v2. The rate limiter, for example, was kind of stopped until we reached the level of let's say stability we wanted. So we reintroduced the rate limiting right into Xen Orchestra, so allowing you to decide a maximum speed for a backup job. For example, if you do backup job during the days, working days, you don't want to have that any impact on your production teams or whatever, so you can use the rate limiter now again. We fixed some pretty old bugs, or kind of, I'm going to say old, but edge cases bug that we were not sure to be able to reproduce, and with a very good collaboration with the XCP-ng team. So it's another important thing to keep in mind, that even when we develop Xen Orchestra, the fact to have the XCP-ng developers in-house is more and more important to make sure that we work efficiently together. So thanks to the great collaboration between the two teams, we managed to reproduce some, let's say, unusual bugs, or sometimes it was really hard to reproduce, but we managed to identify that. So it means less potential issues, even in some edge cases. So regarding timeouts, VDI not managed, and so on and so on. Now let's switch to Core UI, which is the next generation UI for XO6 and XOLite. We improved many components this month, so it's taking shape pretty good right now for being the default view for the XO 6.0 release. So I won't detail all the things, but basically this month we made a lot of progress regarding all the information about backups for all the objects you want to back up. So you can see for each VM the backup and all the information. So we added many things. The backup configuration page, so you know which backup job having which configuration with all the information regarding the job, the last runs, if it was okay, and so on. So it's really neat. Kudos to the UX and UI team who worked a lot to get to that result. So backup will be there for the XO6 first release. We improved also the user menu with more links to help you within the documentation and so on. Also, don't forget you have the links to the REST API documentation, which is bundled. We'll just discuss that after. And we also worked a lot to work even better on pretty large infrastructure. So basically, when you have thousands of VMs or even 10,000s of VMs, we managed to really uh, change the game. I mean, we already had the instant load that you couldn't have with XO5, because with XO5, basically, the first time you open the browser, you have to download all the objects. So if you have, I don't know, thousands of VMs, you had to wait to download all the objects to be displayed in your browser. With XO6 already, it's very different, where we are not downloading all the objects, but for example, for the dashboard, we are just getting the computing number from the server regarding the number of machines, instead of downloading all of them and counting how many machines we have. So it's almost instantly load. But then if you have many objects, still you have to display them with your browser, and that costs a lot of memory. So we introduce many improvements, virtual lists, virtual DOM, and so on. So many technologies that are allowing that to just load the objects that you are actually seeing in the screen. So if you scroll down, it will make the other object disappear and appear only the one that you are actually seeing. It's kind of the same technology used in video games and so on. That's the same kind of stuff. So not computing stuff that you are not actively seeing, because it doesn't matter. So we did that, and now we can reduce a lot the memory usage in your tab. Even if you are using, I don't know, 1000 VMs, it's only half a gig of objects in your tab. And even at 10,000 VMs, it remains responsive within your browser. So clearly it's due to the new nature of the customers we have in the last 2 or 3 years, with having bigger and bigger customers. So we had to develop it, but it's going really in the right direction. There's still potential optimizations to make, but already if you have a very large infrastructure, it's night and day. It's really better. Okay, so a quick thing about XOA. We rebuilt a new image to contain all the dependencies to be able to do the V2V. We just have to get the Broadcom table with the VDDK, allowing you to get faster V2V, VMware to Vates. But all the components are ready to host it, so it's a lot faster to be prepared to make V2V with the VDDK framework, which is again accelerating the migration by a lot, giving you access to WARM and so on. We'll discuss that just a bit after. Let's talk about the REST API right now. So to me, it's probably the biggest release regarding REST API to date. As you know, we started to develop the REST API without following any specific pattern, I would say. And now we decided at some point to migrate to the Open API standard. So the Open API standards is giving you the way to generate documentation automatically called the Swagger. So you can just explore the live documentation that is directly hosted within your XOA. So if you install Xen Orchestra and you click in the documentation, it's auto-generated from the REST API endpoints you have. So we had to then, transfer the old REST API, non-Open API compatible to the new standards, and we finally did it with the only exception of the plugins, but it's kind of a special case. But for all the regular endpoints, it's now migrated to Swagger. So it's really, really cool. So it's done. That's a pretty big milestone, but that's not the only one. Now we also added new endpoints as we do every month. So this time it's about the PBDs, like the objects between the host and the storage repository, but also all the way to list all your backups. You can now just get the backup archive endpoint and list all the backups you have or a specific one and so on. So this is great to integrate within your information system. We also added something really, really cool is the basic authentication support. Before that, what you had to do is to get a token from the web UI or the CLI to be able to use the REST API. Now you can directly authenticate against the REST API without using anything else. So it's a lot easier to integrate with many automation tools and so on. It's pretty simple to use, and then it means with just curl, for example, on the command line, you can do everything. We also added, that's a detail, but in many systems, it's really important that you got a ping endpoint. So you can see that kind of a health endpoint. You can send a get ping request. You will got a pong answer, meaning that the REST API is working, and so Xen Orchestra is working. So it's pretty handy in many, many situations. You want to check the health of the entire Xen Orchestra system and API. So that's it for the API. The REST API, remember, that's the API that is the foundation of x06. So that's why it's that much important. Let's talk quickly about the DevOps tools. As you know, we have a dedicated team that is working on providers for Terraform, Packer, and so on. So we're proud to announce a new version of the Go SDK, the 1.7.0, with a new feature exposing boot parameters. That's a community contribution, so thank you very much. We also improve VM creation and supporting legacy stuff regarding the previous version of the SDK. So thank you, Cyril, for that. And the provider then obviously enjoyed the new version of the SDK and also having, let's say, new values exposed for the boot firmware that wasn't available by before. So this new release is also helping you to build your VMs more easily, let's say. Let's switch to V2V. So we discussed that just a bit before. That's the VMware to Vates tool, which is getting better and better. As we are, supporting now QCO2 disks, we are also ready to migrate VM based on VMware with disks that are larger than 2 terabytes. Now they could be migrated to our QCO2 if you enable the beta, obviously, when it will be finally in the production repo that will work out of the box. Still, it works already. We also improve different things when you connect it to a vCenter instead of an ESXi. There's some, quirks here and there. They're all fixed. And we also remove some locks and so on. So anyway, it's like making sure now V2V is more straightforward, having less surprise, and working out of the box better than ever. Regarding the documentation, we just discussed about Terraform. To let you know that we have a new documentation regarding Terraform with examples, guides, and so on. So if you're interested to do infra as code, it's more than just how to use it, but the best practices and so on. So it's really good documentation. Feel free to have a read. I won't detail everything, but it's important that if you have questions or you've read the doc a while ago, every month we are releasing improvements regarding explanations, better details on what is doing why, and so on and so on. Also, the HA documentation was updated, so feel free to take a look. Same for Easyvirt. If you use DC Scope, DC and DC Netscope, now we got a better explanation on how to deploy, configure, and so on. So feel free to have a read. Just click on the image. You will see we took time to do it, so it's easy to understand and to follow. Let's talk about Community Spotlight this month. We have a pretty cool project from someone in the community who built on top of the REST API an inventory script doing CSVs of either your hosts or VMs and so on. It's just really easy to deploy. That's very minimal because, again, you just need to make a GET request and generate the CSV. So it could be a pretty handy tool. I've put the links to the GitHub repo. If you want to have a look, go ahead. And thanks to Cécile, this month we also have the new version of the Dell Open Manage appliance that is a virtual machine that now run out of the box on top of XCP-ng, thanks to the change she's making every time there's a new version. So she did it this time also. So now the last version is also compatible and you can deploy it as a VM on top of XCP-ng. Staying on the contributions aspects, translations, still many translations around. So it continues to ramp up thanks to Weblight. So thanks to everyone contributing to translate Exolite and Exo6 to different language. Some are already 100%, some less, but it's moving forward and we're really happy with all those contributions. And finally, the last section, the Misc section, which is about the rest. We have pretty cool stuff even in that section. The bug report extraction is a tool that we built through either the API or the CLI, able to get all the logs from either one host or all the hosts of one pool. So if you are, want to give us, detail of a big pool, I don't know, of 10 machines, you had to connect to each pool, get the logs and so on. And with the pool.get system statuses, you have everything in one thing. So you can download it and then analyze, share, whatever. So for support is great. And for you, it's great if you want to investigate any potential issue you might have directly with this call. Then this one is a bit special. It's a feature I decided to code. It's been like almost 10 years I didn't code a feature myself in Xen Orchestra, but the good news is I spent only a few hours to make it, and it's supporting the IPMI data from Lenovo servers. So as you know, we had that for 2CRSI, Dell. We added Lenovo. Maybe in the future we might use for other vendors too, but right now, if you are using a Lenovo servers, you should be able to see the IPMI IP address, power, PSU status, CPUs, and so on directly into the host view in Xen Orchestra. And finally, a requested thing from the community is to raise the compatibility with Netbox, because as you might know, Netbox, each release is sometimes, I say each release, but let's be fair, not each release, but pretty often is breaking compatibility with their API. So now we managed to being compatible again with the version 4.4.x. So we test on the 4.4.5 and it works. So as a reminder, that's the integration allowing to push all the IP addresses from Xen Orchestra to Netbox, which is an IPAM. So a place to store all the IP addresses, which is using what and so on. So now we managed to get that compatibility back on track on the latest versions, at least on that branch 4.4x. Phew, that's it for today. As you can see again, that was a pretty beefy release. We're really happy about it because it's a demonstration that we are accelerating. So in the end, happy Halloween and see you around for November release then. So see you in 1 month. Bye-bye.